Yo, man, I gotta say this. I mean, fuck, you invited me onto your show, or I've been invited onto a show to posit my opinions and to discuss about my experiences in the Army as a counterintelligence agent. I only had one MOS. I always came in as a counterintelligence agent. This was the case 10 years ago when I moved to New York City. I thought about this. I thought about this question, and in thinking about this question now, I have the same answer. I've lived in New York City for 10 years. Some of the most interesting artists, some of the most beautiful women, some of the most intelligent literal astrophysicists, Nobel Prize winning astrophysicists. I've met some of the coolest, slickest fucking whatever here in New York City, right? The most interesting people I've ever met in my life have been in military intelligence. The most interesting people I've ever met in my life have been in military intelligence. Because I mean, fuck it, dude, I hate to say it, but like what everybody else is missing is that military aspect. That, yeah, I have I'm a big brain and a big dick, and I'm so interesting and empathetic and compassionate, right? And I got a great story, right? And whatever, I can put my leg behind my head, whatever, right? But you don't have that warrior fucking part of the narrative, which is what we need in every story, since, campfires of eons ago, right? Anthropologically, like, that's the differentiator. And then within the military, like, look, man, Chinese Star throwing SEAL Team fucking 6, whatever, Red Squadron, Tomahawk dudes, whatever, SAS dudes, I know they're super badass, but like, for me, like what the posters that I put on my ceiling as a kid, I put on my wall as a kid, metaphorically, weren't those dudes per se. It was like the slick talking dude who got the girl, like was doing the, behind the scenes, behind the line stuff. And that's what I'm excited to be talking about is, when I first got to Columbia, I started to meet some like really, really interesting special operations guys. By and large, many more special operations guys as a veteran, as a civilian here in New York City, at meeting them at Columbia than I did in the service. And I used to joke around to them. I was like, dude, you guys were, fucking jumping out of airplanes, shooting people in the face in the middle of the night. And I'm like eating onion rings, like rubbing the thigh, like halfway up the thigh of jihadi fucking Tawhid wal Jihad, which, is basically fucking Al-Qaeda. Turned into like ISIS, Tawhid wal Jihad, the unity of the jihad. Fighters watching porn, flipping through Maxim magazine. Shout out to Maxim magazine. I'm later in life become friends with certain, people associated with that magazine, shall we say. But yeah, it's gonna be an interesting conversation, guys. I hope you guys tune in. It's gonna be 8 p.m. Friday. 8 p.m. Friday, this Friday, 29 January, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on The Team House on YouTube. You can watch it after the fact, but it might be fun to kind of watch. And it's designed to be, we're going to be drinking. I'm going to be in studio. It's going to be Brooklyn. I'm going to be with two killers. So it'll be cool. It'll be neat. We're just drinking, pour yourself a whatever, man. Roll yourself a whatever, Just, it's going to be a conversation about espionage and tactical human intelligence and human intelligence in war zones, and in strategic environments. And I know it sounds super cheesy or whatever, but I know for a fact that Jack is a true political scientist. I know that sounds cheesy, but like if there was a science of politics, he's like a fucking actual science, like a black belt scientist. He's really, really smart. I Superman crushed on him when I met him at Columbia. We both studied political science, and I'm not really that impressed by people's resumes, military resumes for the most part, or just people in general. I was definitely impressed by Jack. Man crushed on him, kind of followed around like a puppy, a little bit. I'm exaggerated, but it was not him, wanting to sit next to me per se. Really interested, and he was first. I remember we've been friends 10 years now. And he was first very kind of surprised coming from the special operations community about how sometimes overt the intelligence world is. Like, with the Frumentarius, or whatever the guy's name is. The guy who was a Navy SEAL and the CIA dude, and now the firefighter. Really great interview, super sharp guy. He said something that was awesome, to the point about being overt in a war zone. It's like, what are you gonna do? Shoot us? You know, I mean, like, what are you gonna do? Shoot us? Mortar us? You know. So there's a degree of it where the cat's out of the bag. Obviously, you're doing everything you can to ensure the protection of your asset, of this fucking human being, you know, with a family. Real talk. Like, that's another thing that I want to touch on. Is like, I'll let the other guy talk about how fucking hot the desert of whatever Anbar was, and, you know, the fire going house to house in fucking Baghdad, and how heavy the kit is. You know, like, that's, for me, it's all the weird nuances in the human stuff. And that's another thing I want to get on camera right here, is when I first got to my first, like, actual deployable, like, big army, like, actual, I'm in the army now, like, unit that I was going to go to war with, I had a mentor. The guy's name was Jason. I'm not going to say, you know, his last name, but this was January of 2005. He had been a counterintelligence agent, and he had been to both Iraq and Afghanistan in that role in January of 2005, like just a couple days after 2004. So in other words, by 2004, he had been to both Iraq and Afghanistan as a CI guy, and that no one had done that at that time. Now everybody, you know, whatever, everybody's. But at the time, and he said that it's the hardest job in the army because you live the life of a grunt, like you kind of live the life of like an infantryman. I mean, I've literally slept in fucking mud. I've slept in fucking caves in Afghanistan. I've slept in enemy positions in the mountains. You live the life of a grunt, but you really understand that these aren't E-type silhouettes. These aren't bots or dummies, crash test dummies. These are real people. You know that because you've been breaking bread with them, you know. So it's hard, man. But it's the best job in the whole world. It's the Peace Corps on human growth hormones, like just steroids on, like, you know,